Welcome to a joint Chapter 2 Books Bookends event featuring author Laura Childs. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for this event. Laura Childs is a New York Times bestselling author who has written a number of mysteries that have been selected as Pick of the Week by the St. Paul Pioneer Press. Her cozy mysteries are much beloved by readers old and new. Copies of her newest book, Peachtree Smash, are available after the presentation, or you are welcome to come to Chapter 2 Books located at 226 Locust Street here in Hudson, or visit our website, www.chapter2books.com. And it's the number 2, not the word TWO. BookEnds Online Edition is produced this month by Travelin Storyseller, parent company of Chapter 2 Books. Like other bookends, this program will be recorded and made available on YouTube. BookEnds is made possible through a grant from Five Wings Arts Council, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and given to the Wadena County Historical Society. So without further ado, please welcome Laura Childs.
Wait until I talk, then. See if I deserve this. Okay, thank you so much for that great introduction. Okay. I want to tell you a little bit about how I started. As a kid, I knew I wanted to be a writer. I just didn't know what kind of writer. Well, I lucked out one day because I had an aunt who worked at Kalamazoo advertising, and she was in the media department. And my mom took me down there once. I was like 9 or 10 years old. And we walked through the halls of Kalamazoo, and I thought, wow, this is so cool. This is where they did the advertising for Ham's Bear and General Mills and all these great products that I knew and loved. And as we walked down the halls, I was kind of peeking into the offices, and there was one office. And all these guys in suits, and they were on the phone and they were talking and they looked kind of frantic. And I said to my aunt, who are those guys? And she said, oh, those are the account executives. And we went to another area and there were guys drawing like crazy on these big boards. And I said, who are they? And she said, those are the art directors. Then we went to a little lounge area where there were a bunch of guys sitting around, smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee and throwing spitballs. Who are those guys? She rolled her eyes and said, oh, those are the writers. That was it. That was it. I knew I wanted to be a writer. And I did work as a writer. I was a writer-producer for agencies such as Gray Advertising, BBDO Advertising, and Bozell and Jacobs. And then I had my own agency called Mission Critical Marketing, where I was CEO and creative director for 15 years. Now, because I'd written and produced so many different radio and TV spots, and worked with lots of film directors, very lucky to work out in Hollywood and some in New York, it seemed like kind of a logical extension that I would get interested in screenwriting. So in my spare time, I began writing screenplays. And I wrote one called The Cheddar Cat. It was about an ad agency guy who's plagued by this giant, visible only to him, cat. And the cat makes his life hell. The screenplay did not sell. Then I wrote one called Beverly Hills Trash Man. It was a romantic comedy about a Beverly Hills trash collector who falls in love with a very wealthy woman who lives in a mansion in Beverly Hills. He gets her trash and then he meets her, and she thinks he's incredibly intuitive because he knows what wine she likes and what her trash. Okay. That one didn't sell either. Then I wrote one called Temporary Insanity, and it was about a guy who loses his company totally, a very wealthy man. He loses his company and he has to go to work doing all these crazy temp jobs. That one didn't sell, but it got optioned by Paramount. So I was getting a little bit closer. Never produced though. Then I had what I call my aha moment. I realized that there's only about 120 screenplays that make it to the screen every year, but there are thousands of books published. So I thought the light bulb clicked on and I began writing a novel. Now my very first novel was called Old Masters. It was a thriller that had to do with stolen World War II art and geriatric Nazis. I wrote this back in the late 90s, so there were still old Nazis around. But when it was done, I thought it was absolutely wonderful. I thought it was better than anything that John Sanford did, or Jeffrey Deaver, or Jenny Hogue, but I didn't know quite what to do with it. Then I had kind of a lucky thing. I have a friend, Jim Smith, who is an illustrator. He did all the art for Bing Crosby, all the stuff for Pebble Beach. He did all the Marlboro Man stuff. Anyway, I was telling him about Old Masters, and he said to me over lunch, "Say, why don't we call my friend Mary? She'll know what to do with it." And I said, "Who's this Mary person?" And he said, "Mary Higgins Clark." Yeah, and I said, "That Mary Higgins Clark?" The queen of suspense, Mary Higgins Clark, and he said, "Yep, that's the one." So I thought, yeah, right, this is never gonna happen, it's never gonna happen. But he called me back a couple hours later and he said, he talked to Mary and she said the best thing I could do would be to come to New York the following month to Mystery Writers of America Symposium, where they give out the Edgar Awards and everything. And she said that she would introduce me to editors, agents, publishers, the whole thing. So I quickly became a member of Mystery Writers of America, and I went to New York with my husband in tow. Now, I knew that when I got to the conference, I had to somehow stand out. So what I did was I had one of my art directors that worked for me at the time make a little promotional piece that looked like a paperback. And here's the cover, Old Masters. And you can see it's got, an Old Master painting with the little, the Third Reich stamp on it there. And the back is a synopsis and then all my contact information. Well, interestingly enough, apparently nobody ever promotes when they go to these things. So I talked to 5 different agents who wanted to handle me. And I ended up going with Mary's agent, who was just a top-notch guy in New York. I was very lucky. So things were set. My agent sent Old Masters to senior editors at Penguin and Random House, but neither of the editors actually wanted to buy it. Then I had kind of a lucky thing again. My agent told me about an editor at Berkeley, an imprint of Penguin Random House, who was looking for a Southern writer to do what they were calling something about tea. And I said, "Oh, I could do that. And I can write a tea mystery." And she said, "No, I don't think so. There are 10 other published authors who are vying for this." And I said, no, listen to me. I said, I know everything there is to know about tea. I have been to tea shops in China and Japan, which I had because my husband taught Chinese and Japanese art history at the university. So I did travel through Asia. And I said, I've even been to a tea plantation. Now, I didn't tell her it was on the bullet train, going from Tokyo to Kyoto at 120 miles an hour. And I was reading a book and my husband said, "Look, honey, there's a tea plantation." Fake it till you make it. So anyway, I gave this a shot. I wrote a 12-page outline for Death by Darjeeling, what was to be my very first tea shop mystery. And then I wrote 3 sample chapters to go along with that. Well, I think my chapters are pretty convincing because they liked it and they gave me a contract for 3 tea shop mysteries. Now, I didn't really know too much about it, but I knew that Mary Higgins Clark had gotten a 3-book contract for $6 million. I didn't ask for $6 million, but I knew enough to ask for a 3-book contract. So I got it. And that turned into a mystery series about a woman named Theodosia Browning, who owns the Indigo Tea Shop in Charleston, South Carolina. Theodosia is a smart, savvy entrepreneur who also has a really good knack for solving crimes. She's helped along by a cast of characters. There's Drayton, her tea sommelier, who's a little bit stiff with the bow tie and all that. Then we've got Haley, her chef and baker. She can cook like Gordon Ramsay. She can swear like him too. And then I have a tea shop dog named Earl Grey. Okay. Because these are murder mysteries, I always make sure to drop a dead body in the very first chapter, which generally sends Theodosia, my amateur sleuth, into investigation mode. She has a very fierce curiosity gene, and it doesn't take much to prompt her into launching her own shadow investigation. Sometimes, the police aren't really thrilled about that, but anyway, she does it anyway. Because I wanted a cozy feel, but I wanted a pace and pulse of a thriller, I created a kind of hybrid book, which I call a thrillsy. It's kind of a thriller, but it's also a cozy. That first series has turned into 28 books and was super successful. It's landed on the New York Times, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly bestseller lists. Now, I didn't want to just settle for one series, so I wrote another 30 books or so. My second series is my scrapbook mystery series. Now that one got its jump start when my husband had the proverbial army buddy in New Orleans, and they invited us down for Mardi Gras. Now, because his buddy lived in the what's that called? It's the Garden District. He lived in the Garden District, which is very fancy. It's where Anne Rice had her mansion. And he was a member of the Comus and the Rex crews. We got to go into all the float dens, meet the float builders, go to the private parties, and one night we marched in a parade right behind Al Hurt and his float. It was absolutely incredible. I suddenly, from that experience, had inside information about something I never even thought about. So I put this know-how to good work, and in 4 months' time, I wrote a scrapbook mystery called Keepsake Crimes. Then I went on to write 15 more books in that exact series. Then I thought, well, you're not busy enough, your blood pressure is not blowing up yet, you're not. When your life blows up, you're successful. So I wrote a third series, and that is the Cackleberry Club Mysteries. It's a little bit different. It's set in a small, fictional Midwestern town by the name of Kindred, and it features 3 women who own a cozy restaurant called the Cackleberry Club. Eggs are the morning specialty there. Now, all of the women have lost their husband in some way. Suzanne, the owner, her husband died of cancer. Petra, who was the cook and the chef, her husband has Alzheimer's. And then Tony, who's kind of the smart mouth of the trio, her husband ran off with the floozy VFW bartender with the hot pink extensions in her ear. That was Junior. Yeah, he plays a part in many of the books, though. He's a crazy character. Yeah. I also pitched my editor on a 4th series. That's my Afton Tangler series. And one of the books features a murder that actually takes place right here in Hudson. Ooh, yeah. That was, can't remember the name of it. After 57 books. Something, I think it was Little Girl Gone. It was Little Girl Gone. Yeah, that's it, yeah. I've been one very lucky author, luckier than most would-be authors who were trying to break it at the time. Because what worked for me 22 years ago does not work today. The world of publishing has changed big time. Publishers are large conglomerates. In fact, they've all kind of merged. Penguin is with Random House now. It's crazy. They're being undercut by ebooks, by self-published authors, and hundreds of newly mentioned presses. So there's been a considerable amount of belt-tightening and cutbacks. I received an email from an fellow author, not too long ago. She's written 5 mysteries for Penguin, but now they're not going to renew her contract. Why? Well, she's making money for them, just not enough money. An agent I talked to recently said she pitched a serial killer series to an editor, HarperCollins. The editor said, that's exactly what I'm looking for, and then he didn't buy it. So, do editors really know what they're looking for? Not always. Do they know when they see it? Well, sometimes they do. The radical shift that's taken place in publishing today is that editors are young. Most of them are under 30, and they no longer edit. Editors are now in charge of acquisitions. They're tasked with finding new authors with brand new material. Now, this new breed of author is always on the hunt for the next big thing. And usually that means a great story with some great characters, because a character-driven story is what's really critical these days, sometimes even more so than terrific writing. Even more importantly, editors are looking for breakout books. They're looking for books that are different, that don't retell the same old story. Books like The Women, Remarkably Bright Creatures, that one stars an octopus, or The Hunter. Books that really stand out in their categories. So what can beginning authors do if they want to increase their chance of success? What can you do if you got a story to tell and a year in to be published? Well, you have to take a look at the various categories out there. Domestic thrillers are still really big. Classic mysteries, thrillers, and romance categories are holding very strong. Vampire and zombie books have kind of dropped off. They're not selling like they used to. But editors are still looking for fantasy, young adult, and what they call new romance. Today's tougher market, though, means that authors now have to write and submit a finished manuscript. I was able to pitch and win contracts based on 3 chapters and outline. That's changed completely. Now editors want to see the complete finished manuscript. Too many of them have been burned by people who could knock out a good, 90 pages, 100 pages, and then they couldn't finish their book. Authors also need to look at how their concept relates to what's out there. If there's already 35 different culinary mysteries, your chances of pitching to 36, it could be a very tough sell. If you're pitching a children's book today, you have to have your text perfectly written and you have to have illustrations completely done to go along with it. And if you're a would-be author, you have to kind of believe in yourself and never get discouraged by all the rejections, because everybody gets rejections and they're brutal. Let me give you an example. John Grisham, his first novel, The Client, was turned down by 30 agents and 15 publishers. Stephen King's first novel, Carrie, was turned down 80 times. 33 publishers turned down Chicken Soup for the Soul before it became a bestseller and spawned a whole bunch of chicken soup series. James Patterson's first novel was turned down 12 times. Tony Hillerman was told to get rid of the Indian stuff. And Mary Higgins Clark, who helped me get started, was rejected 40 times before making her first sale. One editor told Mary, "Your story is light, slight, and trite." It was really wrong, weren't they? In today's on-demand publishing climate, no matter what kind of book an author is writing, it's hugely important to establish an opening storybook immediately. These days, editors don't want pages and pages of buildup. They want you to toss your reader directly into the action. They want a great first chapter, and they also want kind of a grab you by the throat opening line. Let me give you a couple examples of what I think are terrific opening lines. This is from Lisa Scottolini's Pigeon Tony's Last Stand. It was June in South Philly, and the humidity was scented with cheesecakes. Okay. Here's one by Sean McClaskey. The problem I have in bars is my mouth. Booze goes in, words come out. Great first line. Okay, here's one. Lisa Mannerfield wrote, "The police came on a chicken stew night." Just great stuff. Okay, let's say you come up with a catchy opening line. Now you've got to actually sit down, write your novel. How do you go about doing that? Well, for me, it helps to have an outline. Some authors are totally brilliant with this, but I'm a big believer in outlines. They help kind of speed up my thought process and create kind of a roadmap for exactly where my story is going. In Peach Tea Smash, my newest tea shop mystery, I knew I wanted to kick it off with a Mad Hatter masquerade and a spooky old grist mill. But that was just a concept. That was not a plot. So I began mapping everything out on a large sheet of paper, starting with a bombshell murder to propel my story forward. Then I added in characters, plot lines, second murder, always have to have a second murder, the darkest before dawn scene, where my protagonist seems to be absolutely failing, and then a big crazy ending. If you outline fairly carefully, a novel tends to evolve almost organically. It's all about crafting a plot versus flying by the seat of your pants. If you craft your plot, it'll turn. If you don't, it's not going to be that ready-made bestseller. Now, once you've got the bones of your book figured out, you probably need to do some research. For every novel that I write, I create kind of a concept book. Sometimes it's a 3-ring binder where I put notes in, and sometimes they're clippings and pictures, photos, whatever catches my fancy. Example, if you're writing a police procedural and you're talking about DNA, then you want to collect articles about DNA and how it solved different crimes and stuff. Anything that helps you kind of be spot on. When I wrote my thriller Shadow Girl, which was the first in that Twin Cities series, I visited all the locales that I referenced in the book, and I took photos, and that really helped me to create accurate descriptions and a sense of place. The first chapter of a mystery or a thriller also requires what I like to call a James Bond opening. Now, you've seen James Bond movies, right? Of course you have. Boom, before the credits even roll, there's James Bond. He's skiing down a glacier. He jumps into his car, he goes, blows up the Kremlin, jumps back in his car and makes love to a woman. Now, mysteries and thrillers need to open with that kind of action that gets your readers adrenaline pumping and jumpstarts the entire story. I have started some of my first chapters, with hot air balloon crashes, horse races, dead bridegrooms, exploding parade floats, art thefts, stabbings, bombs, body toss from tower windows, and lots more. I do this because action is compelling, and job one for me is to entertain my reader. A book, just like a movie, a TV show, a casino, a football game, or street fair, whatever, is all about entertainment. If I don't hit the sweet spot on what I call the entertainment-o-meter, then I'm not doing my job. Once I start writing, I rarely stop to edit my book. Rather, I try to write straight through until I have a complete chapter. If I can't find the exact words, I just type in a few X's and I keep going. Once I finish a complete chapter, then I go back and look at it. In fact, when I wrote Eggs in Purgatory, my very first Cackleberry plot mystery, I wrote the book straight through in 3 months' time without stopping to make a single change or edit. When I was finally done, 100% finished, then I went back and did my edits, changes, corrections, updates. Much to my surprise, I thought, oh my God, that was a wreck. Well, it got a huge mention in Publishers Weekly, and the second book in that series, Eggs of Benedict Arnold, I love the title, of course, went on to hit the New York Times bestseller list. My publisher told me that I was the only cozy author who ever hit the New York Times bestseller list, so I was really happy about that. But they helped. They had a great staff who does great publicity and sales and all that. On the days that I write my books, I try to keep my time absolutely sacrosanct. That means no going out for lunch, no online shopping, which is very difficult for me, or no checking social media, okay? It's just sitting at my computer and writing. And let me assure you, no author needs a personal assistant, incense, burning sage, feng shui, or sweat lodge visions. All you need to do is park yourself in front of a computer and find yourself a nice chunk of quiet time. Just keep typing and something will happen. For would-be writers, here's a tip I can't emphasize enough. Try to read as much as you can. After a while, you start to pick up little tricks and techniques that other authors use. You'll see how John Sanford, who's one of my favorite authors, keeps his writing kind of conversational and kind of cop-talky, so it's easily digestible. And when Stephen King, another one of my favorite authors, when he makes a leap in credibility, well, his writing is just so cajoling and comfortable. The acting makes you believe in vampires and doomsday scenarios. Now, when it comes to writing dialogue, you want it to sparkle like cut glass, but it also has to sound natural. Authors do this, and I try and do this too, by keeping sentences and phrases fairly short. Sometimes authors will run on, a sentence will be a paragraph. Okay, that's hard to read for me, for anybody, I think. And a really competent author will make sure each character uses different grammar and figures of speech. An author also needs to have a clear idea of why they're writing their book. They have to make sure there's a viable market out there for the subject matter. They have to know who their audience is and figure out what characters, plot twists, or tricks they can employ to make their readers care very deeply about their subject matter. If you want to write, if anybody wants to write, any of the people want to write, whether it's short stories, poetry, screenplays, or a full-length novel, I would urge you to be very, very daring. Tackle new subjects, introduce oddball characters, or create crazy plot loops. There are wonderful authors out there who have created whole new worlds. Look at Ray Bradbury. Mind-blowing situations, Jay Patterson comes to mind, and amazing plot twists, Gillian Flynn, to be sure. And one more thing, if you want to write, you need to just trust in yourself and just do it. It's like the Nike slogan, just do it. Don't ever let anybody tell you you're too young, you're too old, you're not clever enough, you're too inexperienced, you don't know enough, you're not educated enough, or you aren't physically capable, because you can do it. You have the potential. When the great artist Renoir was old and incapacitated with arthritis, he learned to paint with his feet. The author, Alice Walker, who wrote The Color Purple, was legally blind. They made it work, and so can you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Right there.
Yeah, I wonder how long during the day do you write, and then how many books do you come out per year?
Well, I started out doing 3 books a year. Then I did 4 books a year, and then my life blew up, so I went back to 2 books a year. But I did manage to get 57 books out, and I've got a contract for 6 more books.
And are you working on different series at the same
I'm writing
time?
2 series, right?
2 series, okay,
2 of them, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, in fact, one is not even in the series, it's a whole new thing.
okay.
It's just crazy standalone called The Headhunter's Wife. About this poor woman who gets dragged off to Borneo because her husband has a grant, you know, to study tribes there, and she gets into big trouble. But it's fun to write, it's really scary.
So you've got so many books, and I'm only familiar with the tea shop.
Yeah.
Do you keep a notebook so you remember?
No, and I forget them all the time.
Okay.
I forget all the time.
Their quirks and their, you know,
Yeah.
their.
No, I remember the characters.
Okay,
I remember I don't
Yeah.
remember the plots.
okay,
I can't go back and say, oh, that part of Green, that plot was.
Okay.
Oh, I do know, start out with a
sure,
boat in
okay,
the harbor and
okay,
gunshots go. Yeah. Yeah, it gets trickier the more books you have.
yeah.
Yeah. But I love it.
I-
Yeah.
So do you like tea?
Yes, very much. Yeah, I know.
You create your own teas?
Yeah. Yeah. You could go to any tea shop and get little, dribs and drabs you can buy them at the store and you can mix it together. I mean, maybe you like green tea, but you like a little bit of lemon in it, so you get kind of a white tea with a lemon flavor and you can mix it together. Oh, yeah. It's mixology. It's like making a cocktail. Although, and people have made cocktails with tea. I've heard of people making teas. I've never tried it, but it sounds kind of interesting. Oh, was I supposed to stand behind here? So
Oh, no, that's fine. We
Did
can,
you
we can
readjust?
move it. Yeah, we'll
Okay,
readjust.
okay,
We're flexible.
okay.
Are
You
there
said-
any other cozy authors that you like?
Well, I like Monica Ferris very much. She wrote the ones that took place.
Cross stitch or.
Yeah, cross stitch. The first one was called Cruel World, CRUWEL. Oh, that title just blew me away. I thought that was just fabulous. And the other thing about Monica, and we got to be friends, and she had her main character Betsy Devonshire at the back of every one of her books. She did like a cross stitch pattern, and I thought, that's just genius. You're giving your readers something extra. So that's what I started putting in recipes. And I thought every time, in my tea shop dishes especially, when they mention chocolate chip scones or they mention, kind of tea bread, lemon tea bread. So I started putting the recipes in. But Monica kind of gave me that idea to kind of, when the book is over, the book isn't really over because there's all this extra stuff. So I put it tea time.
also does that.
Yes, yeah, Diane Von Davidson, right. Yeah, she's got lots of recipes in hers. Yeah, but she hasn't been writing for a while. I did like her very much, but she hasn't been writing very much, yeah. I don't know, sometimes you get dropped, who knows?
So when you're writing the series.
Yeah.
Do you think again about where this might go in future books, or are you focused on?
Oh, no, I've got, for the tea shop issue, I've probably got another 20 or 30 titles. And I know what I kind of do with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't always know how I finish them, but I usually know mine are gonna kill somebody in the first chapter.
But do you know who done it?
Yeah, you have to have that, you have to have that. I know people who don't know, who write a book and they don't know till like the last chapter. But no, that doesn't work for me. I have to know who does it, yeah. And I also have to weave, you have to have, 3, 4, 5 subjects. Suspects,
Right.
yeah.
Whatever.
You have to, you have to weave them in throughout the whole story. In fact, I color code it when I do my big sheet of paper. I color code all my suspects, so one doesn't just come in chapter 13,
Right.
it's like, where's he been up until now? So I try and kind of weave them in and then the color code, so I make sure that, it's fair to the reader.
So you make your victim and kind of the list of suspects
That's
and
That's it.
figure out.
Then I figure out the actions, yeah, and I make like a calendar, figure out what happens, on day 1 is a murder, day 2. She gets pulled into something, on day 3, something else happens, day 4, there's a second murder and another suspect.
Do you watch mysteries also?
Sure.
On television?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I was almost on, Hallmark wanted to option my tea shop. No, they don't want to pay me. They also want to film it in. What's the state next to Arizona?
New Mexico?
Yeah, they want to film it in New Mexico. You can't put the tea shop in New Mexico. It's not in an adobe hut. I mean, it's in Charleston, it's
Very southern thing.
yeah, it's southern and it's sweet and it's sweet tea and, oh.
How do you come up with all your themed teas, which is so creative?
The theme teas, those are easy.
Easy.
Yeah, I just clicked on them. Remember, I used to own an advertising agency, so I did creative on demand, and I used to do naming things like for General Mills, I did Suddenly Salad and, I did all that stuff. I named Excel Energy, I did all that stuff. So it's pretty easy. I'm used to it. Yeah, that's my job. I'm a writer, I'm a professional writer.
And you plan to continue for as long as you can?
Well, I have 6 more, I have a contract for 6 months. Yeah. I don't need to write anymore, but I like to write, so,
And do you like to travel?
yeah, some.
But you haven't been before?
I've been to Indonesia. Yeah, my husband and I went to Indonesia once, and then we went to Bali. I believe that Borneo was very close to the part of Indonesia I was in. Borneo was part of Indonesia, actually, so I think that that's good enough. Yeah, I got a good
You
taste
have
of
a
it.
sense of the place.
Oh, yeah, there's, the terrorists with the rice and the volcanoes and everything. It's cool, it's a really cool place, yeah. I remember the first time I woke up like at 5 in the morning when we were in Bali. And I walked out on a balcony and I looked, and there was a steaming volcano across the South China Sea, and I thought, wow. This is so cool, yeah. So I'm trying to put some of that into my Headhunter's Wife book. I got 150 pages on it, so I need another 150 pages. I'll get there.
As a reader, I enjoy the sense of place.
Yes, that's very important, yeah.
What was the 4th series you mentioned? I know the first.
That was the Afton Tangler series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you actively working on that too? Still?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No. I don't know what,
I don't remember hearing.
I
about
just,
that.
yeah, the other ones, the tea shop mysteries sell really well.
Yeah.
And my publisher likes me to focus on the ones that sell well.
Okay.
Imagine that. It is a business, though. It is a business, so I do focus on the ones that make the most money for myself.
Yeah. I noticed in that series, even though they referred to 3 years ago or 5 years ago, they all stay the same age, which I kind of like.
They do say the same, they do,
Is
yeah,
that intentional?
yeah. Well, it is, yeah, you don't want
Because
to, yeah.
otherwise,
I mean,
yeah.
that's where she's in her
Yeah.
60s, I mean,
Right.
what fun is that?
Right.
Yeah, I always kind of think of my books as kind of like the Aztec calendar,
Yeah,
in
I like that.
in one book, it's December and it's It's, I forget the name, there's a Christmas book that I love, and then the next book comes out, and it's March, you know, and it's springtime, and they're having the
Yeah.
springtime tea, and then it's summertime.
I like,
So I kind of shortened up, you
Yeah.
know, her world,
right.
her calendar a little bit. That seems to work pretty well. No
Is there
whispering, no whispering.
Yeah.
That's not a lot.
You said something about like editors are now into acquisitions, so,
That's all they do.
right,
They-
but
they
who
don't
edits the books or?
The line editor. It's a
Okay.
freelance line editor, gets paid nothing.
Oh,
Yeah, there's all these poor people. I mean, I guess they're ex-English majors or something like that.
yeah, cause I worked for Time Inc. for a while.
You work for.
I worked for AOL Time Warner, Time Inc. I was
Oh,
working
okay.
for Sports Illustrated for a while. And I used to think like editors was like the bomb. You got to
Oh,
like
God.
help writers write and,
No, in fact, you know, the editors, I mean, if they don't come up with an author who can sell, you know, they get canned.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's changed.
it's a tough life,
Yeah,
being an editor and an author. You see a lot of authors and you wonder why, oh, they wrote, you know, 3 books under this name and 3 books under this name and 3 books. Well, they didn't sell, so they
Yeah.
tried, they changed their name and, you know, tried to.
and I noticed some
Yeah.
some authors write, because I'm a buyer now, when I'm looking for their back titles, I'm like, wait, these ones I have to get from Penguin, these ones I have to get from
Right.
Hachette, these
Yeah.
ones are
They
like,
play
nobody's,
musical
yeah,
chairs,
musical
yeah.
chairs, yeah.
They do, yeah.
Where somebody buys it and then they change
Yeah,
the
no,
cover
I've
and
never
stuff.
done
that
that.
covers
I've
stuff,
stayed
yeah.
with Penguin Random House.
Yeah.
They've been good to me, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna stay with them.
cool.
I'll die with them, yeah.
Do you get input from family or friends on your stories and
No,
thoughts?
no.
You never ask for it, no?
No. No. No, my husband doesn't, he don't mind anything to do with it.
too.
No, my professor husband don't want anything to do with it. He'll go on the trips, but he don't. No, he reads it. He loves everything I do. That's, you know, it's not fair. I mean, you know, he's not a good what you call a beta reader or something like that, where you give it your first, you know, 5 chapters to somebody to see if it's working. If I give it to them, they'll go, oh, honey, this is so good, you know. No, it's not quite there yet. I don't. No, I can't. I can't trust him. Not with that.
Do you have a first reader?
No.
Somebody, no?
No,
Cool.
no, not anymore. No, just set it to my, oh, in the old days, I used to have to print it out, put it on a disc, and, you know, put it in these big manuscript boxes and send it. Now I just hit the button and I don't think about it anymore. But, yeah, my editor in New York just gets it and he looks it over a little bit.
Yeah.
He's never made any changes, ever. I mean, I hear about these authors who rewrite half of their book, but. Yeah, I've been lucky that way. I think it was my, you know, 15 years in advertising. That, you know, being a professional writer. you
Yeah.
know, I learned how to write. Quick and fairly taut, you know, fairly good sentences, yeah. So I don't need to be, you know, have big changes.
Yeah, they don't let you have writer's block at an ad agency.
There's no such thing. I don't believe in writer.
No,
No, I think it's somebody in California invented that term.
ah,
You know, I don't believe.
So your contract for 6 books is that all the tea shop history or? is
They
that
are tea shops, they are tea
series?
shop mysteries,
Okay.
right? Now, they want me to do more scrapbook mysteries, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of busy. I did do 2 scrapbook mysteries with a co-author,
Okay,
Terry Farley Moran. She was great to work with. I would like outline the chapter and then she'd write it and then I'd kind of tell her where to fill in and then.
okay.
But that took a little longer too to do
Yeah.
that. It's kind of a bit of back and forth, so. I decided not to do that anymore.
What do the publishing companies and you do to promote the books?
Okay. When I first started, the publishing companies did nothing. They did nothing. What they did have was a good sales force. Penguin had a really good sales force and they were out there all the time calling on bookstores. And they really kind of made my career, the sales force of Penguin. But the publicity department really didn't do anything. They only focus on the big name authors. like a Stephen King or a James Patterson, something like that. Okay, now that I've hit the New York Times bestseller list quite a few times, now they're focusing on me. So I do national advertising. Yeah. And that seems to work very, very well for me. And I do a lot of stuff, a lot of radio interviews around the country, things like that. And that, it really helps. It's terrific. Yeah. Then there's a magazine, the Tea Time Gazette. And I used to run ads in it, and then a year ago, they called me up, they said, oh, would you like a whole page? And I said, what? They said, just write whatever you want. So I've been writing about tea, I wrote about Japanese pottery, I wrote about feng shui in the garden, took some pictures in my husband's garden. And it's been great, so people have found my books that way too. Yeah.
How did you choose Charleston for the location?
Well, interesting enough, when they said something about tea, this is way back. I did some research on the internet right away, and I found out that the oldest tea garden, really the only real tea garden, is outside of Charleston. And tea is apparently kind of like rootstock for wine. You have to bring over the old rootstock from the old country and plant it and let it go for, let it mature for, 7, 8, 10 years, whatever it is. Anyway, I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. Then I started doing some more research, and I was thinking about names for my character. And I found out there was an actual Theodosia, which is my main character, Theodosia Browning. She was the niece of Aaron Burr, and she was married to the governor of South Carolina. And I thought, wow, that's cool. You hear the name Theodosia, you never forget it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a name.
Yeah.
And that's what I was looking for all along. So, yeah, South Carolina, it's just, and it's a really old city. It's pre-Revolutionary War. There's mansions, there's haunted cemeteries. It's one of the most haunted cities in the country, according to all these ghost people who go out looking around. It's got old families, a lot of wealth. It's a crazy place. It's
Your
spooky.
books
It's
must-
spooky.
Your books must sell pretty well there,
They do, yes.
so
Yeah.
you probably go to a bookstore.
I have done some, yeah. 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 I love Charleston. It's great, yeah.
If you could write any book guaranteed a success,
Yeah.
would you do something different than a cozy mystery? Or is there something about that genre that you just,
Well, I do like thrillers. I do like thrillers. And the one I'm writing now is a domestic thriller.
okay,
It's very different from my cozy, so,
okay,
yeah, I have,
your thrillsies, but.
my
So
thrillers,
thrill-
right, yeah. Yeah, and I always kind of wanted to write a historical mystery. I heard about. I met somebody who's, it was like his great grandfather had been a powder boy on one of the ships during the Revolutionary War when he was 6 years old. And I thought, oh my God, there's a story there. And the title would be The Powder Boy, and it's about this kid who's in these incredible battles, facing down. I mean, the world's largest navy, can you imagine? And there's a 6-year-old kid, he's the powder boy, he's bringing up the stuff, and I thought, no, there's a historical book that I could write. But I haven't written it yet. But maybe I will. There's a lot of, I've got notes on about 30 books that I'd like to write. But I haven't gotten to them all yet. I'm running out of time.
Now, the book that is for sale tonight, that's in the series of
That's the new tea shop mystery.
now, if a person hadn't read the previous ones.
That's okay, they're all written as standalone books.
Okay,
Yes, they're the same characters, but they're all written as standalone. You don't have to read, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Okay.
27
right.
to get the gist, believe me. You don't have to.
Yeah, I've noticed that a number of authors do that now, like, the Andy Carpenter series by Rosenfeld. I ended up reading some of them out of order, and then I realized, oh, okay, so you kind of see the through stories, but at the same time, any individual book is not
Yeah.
impossible to understand or
Exactly.
enjoy because you
Right.
haven't read the 400 that came before his.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool, I like that.
Yeah, well, look at James Patterson, I mean, the
Yeah.
Women's Murder Club, and you don't have to read the first one to enjoy the 7th or 8th or 9th one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, the Alex Cross series, you don't have to read the very first one.
Yeah, I don't think I read those in order either.
You haven't read those?
I read those, I just didn't read them in order, I don't think.
No, I don't think I did either.
Yeah, I think
I
I
might have
started
read
with,
the first one that came on.
I read Kiss the Girls
That was a-
first, but I thought Along Came a Spider.
That was the second one, I think.
Was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he did have one that came out. He was an ad guy too. He worked
Yeah.
at J. Wilbur Patterson.
ah,
Yeah, in New York, yeah. He had one that came out in 75 and it was terrible.
yeah,
And then he didn't write for a long time. He was just an account guy, J.
Yeah.
Walter in New York. Then he started writing. It really took off, but he was a really good marketing guy too.
yeah,
Yeah. The people I know who work for ad agencies, who work for newspapers, TV stations, they tend to do much better than just somebody who's decides to sit down at their computer and whack out a book.
I think you could tell James Patterson was a good marketing guy, because look at him now, and
Yeah.
maybe all of the co-authors and the
Sure.
different.
It's the same thing he did in an ad agency, you know, and
Exactly.
at an ad agency, you're always working with other writers and art directors, and you're bringing in a director or something, if you're gonna do a TV spot or something, you're bringing an outside director. Yeah, it's the same thing. Okay, anything else? Okay.
all right.